Because Sundays are always slow days as people aren't working. The story we have today, actually it's kind of funny. Foody Calls. Dating for a free meal rather than a relationship. Yes, like the booty call, a foodie call is when women will try and get a date with a guy because they want a free meal. And according to this study, I believe it's around a third of women engage in what's called foodie calls. Now we're going to read through this. But let me tell you a few things. For one, I recently saw a post on a subreddit called Am I the A-hole? And this subreddit is, you ask the audience essentially, am I the bad person for doing X? And then they tell you whether or not you are good or bad. I've actually seen several where guys talk about how they refuse to pay for the woman's meal and the woman gets really angry, or how they skipped out on them or left them stranded and things like that. And it's kind of funny for two reasons. Feminism has brought us to the point where men no longer pay for the woman's meal. And that makes sense. One of the arguments being that back in the day, men were the breadwinners. They made the money. So yeah, the guy would pay. In today's day and age, men and women are expected to be equal in the workforce and everywhere else, in which case, men aren't going to pay for the woman's food. But here's the great double-edged sword. How this story was brought to my attention was that someone on Facebook tagged me in the post to explain to me how this is an example of male discrimination against women and the patriarchy. Because yes, the fact that a man wouldn't pay for a woman's food now is actually patriarchy, because men make 33% more money, which the number just seems to get bigger and bigger, which is not true. By any reasonable statistic based on today's averages, it's actually around 5 to 7. I think 5 is the fair percentage because 3 to 7% is the range. Men for the same job, right? So if you hire a male school teacher and a female school teacher, guy's going to make probably about 5% more. It's between 3 and 7. And we don't necessarily know why, but it's not believed to be based on discrimination, but it's mostly about women negotiating or asking. There was one anecdote that was presented in a study where it was, I can't remember exactly which one, but a school was giving men higher ranking jobs and women lower ranking jobs. And when they asked why, they looked at the documents and found the women weren't asking for higher ranking jobs. So there's a belief that men are naturally more assertive, probably has to do with testosterone, and thus men are going to demand or want more. I also think it has to do with men's likelihood to take risks. Men are substantially more likely to take risks. Therefore, if a guy goes into a meeting, he's going to be like, I would rather ask for everything, whereas a woman's going to be less risk averse and play it safe. This will create a small imbalance. But no, not 33%, not 23%, not 20%, not even 15%. It's between 3 and 7. But let's read the story about foodie calls. And then I've got a special treat, a Reddit thread where a guy tells the story about how he split the bill with a date who got really angry. And it's a simple story. That's basically it, but we'll read it. So this is from the Society for Personality and Social Psychology. They say, for Washington, D.C., when it comes to getting a date, there's any number of ways people can present themselves and their interests. One of the newer phenomena is called a foodie call, where a person sets up a date with someone they are not romantically interested in for the purpose of getting a free meal. New research finds that 23 to 33% of women in an online study say they've engaged in a foodie call. Upon further analysis, the social and personality psychology researchers found that women who scored high on the dark triad of personality traits, psychopathy, Machiavellianism, narcissism, as well as express traditional gender role beliefs, were most likely to engage in a foodie call and find it acceptable. Now, I'll stop here and say this. I absolutely, if I was going to go on a date with a woman and I knew her to be conservative, and maybe she said to me, she expressed how she's looking to start a family, she's not as interested in career, I would actually understand if she expected me to pay the bill. If she's looking to start a family, not a career, her priorities are not in making money, necessarily. Although I do think we're in an interesting period in our culture where I don't know how you have a family and someone can be expected to live and just cross their fingers their partner is going to pay for them. Made a lot of sense when there was marriage, not so much today, because marriage, well, I think marriage is on the decline. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure millennials aren't getting married or having kids. Anyway, I digress. If I wanted a date with somebody who is liberal, there's no way in hell I'm paying for your food, okay? Plain and simple. Now, I'll say this. When I go out to eat with my friends, we argue over who's going to cover the food. Because, like, if we go to a diner, it's going to be like $20. So it's be like, oh, I'll get it. No, I'll get it. It's like, oh, and then somebody eventually just pays for it. But if I'm going on a date with a woman, there's got to be mutual respect. So if it's someone who's, career-driven, which is kind of like the women that I tend to be attracted to, assertive, career-driven, liberal types, then I'm not paying for your food, plain and simple. Let's read more. Oh, yeah. But the point I want to make there is that I have no problem with someone expressing traditional gender role beliefs and not wanting to pay for food. I do have a problem with psychopaths and narcissists trying to score a free meal off me. So that was the point I was trying to make. The research by Brian Collison, Jennifer Howell, and Trista Herrig of Azusa Pacific University and UC Merced appears in the journal Social Psychology and Personality Science. In the first study, 820 women were recruited, with 40% reporting they were single, 33 married, and 27 saying they were in a committed relationship but not married. Out of them, 85% said they were heterosexual, and they were the focus for this study. The women answered a series of questions that measured their personality traits, beliefs about gender roles, and their foodie call history. They were also asked if they thought a foodie call was socially acceptable. 23% of women in the first group revealed they'd engaged in a foodie call. Most did so occasionally or rarely. Although women who had engaged in a foodie call believed it was more acceptable, most women believed foodie calls were extremely to moderately unacceptable. So let's be clear here. Here's the thing. If a woman who is practicing traditional gender roles or believes in them goes on a date with you and it's a legitimate date and expects you to pay the bill, that sounds reasonable, right? It's a legitimate, inquiry into a potential relationship, and she, is traditional, so that makes sense. What we're talking about specifically, what makes this less moral and more unethical, are the secular, liberal, progressive women, who I guess might be narcissists, who don't have any interest in you whatsoever and just want free food. So they go on Tinder and say, I'm hungry. And then they try and get you to go on a date with them so you pay the bill. They say the second study analyzed a similar set of questions of 357 women and found straight women and found 33% had engaged in a foodie call. It is important to note, however, that neither of these studies recruited representative samples of women, so we cannot know if these percentages are accurate for women in general. So it's an interesting thought, I suppose. For both groups, those that engaged in foodie calls scored higher in the dark triad personality traits. Several dark traits have been linked to deceptive and exploitative behavior in romantic relationships, such as one-night stands, faking an orgasm, or sending unsolicited nudies. We'll say that. Collison and Herrig said they became interested in the subject of foodie calls after reading about the phenomenon in the news. As for how many foodie calls might be occurring in the United States, Collison says that can't be inferred from the current research. They could be more prevalent, for instance, if women lied or misremembered their foodie calls to maintain a positive view of their dating history. The researchers also note that foodie calls could occur in many types of relationships and could be perpetrated by all genders. Yes, of course. So here's what we'll do. I'm going to pop over, because I saw this from a couple months ago, but I've seen a ton of these threads. So check it out. They say, am I the a-hole for leaving my date to pay her portion of the bill? I'm going to tell you straight up, no, you're not. Not at all. You did nothing wrong. We are not in the era of traditional gender roles, and if that's what society has deemed socially acceptable, then it's actually socially unacceptable for a woman to assume the man will pay for her meal, plain and simple. Now, it's unfortunate for conservative and traditional types, but I think you need to make that clear moving forward. But I also think you can infer that from, if you meet someone and she says she's more conservative, then you can probably expect you're going to cover her meal. And if she says she's liberal, feminist, or whatever, then you can probably expect you're going to split the bill. So this guy writes, presumably this is a true story. This happened a week or so ago. I met this girl on Tinder, and we were talking for a couple days, and she asks me something along the lines of, so when are we going out to dinner? Cool, I ask her where she wants to go. She says this local trendy seafood place. We agree on a time, and that's that. A few days later, we meet at the restaurant. I order an appetizer and a beer. She orders a cocktail. We then both order entrees, and she gets a second drink. Anyways, we finish eating, and she seemed pretty cool up until that point, and we had been hitting it off. Our waiter comes by, and I ask if we can get our checks, and to put the appetizer on my check. The girl immediately looks disgusted. The waiter brings out our checks, and she just kind of sits there quietly. When the checks arrive, the conversation between me and her goes on like this. I thought this was a date. I say, what do you mean? Her. Then why did you get separate checks? Me. Because we ordered separate food, I'll cover the app since I ordered it. Her. You're supposed to be a gentleman. Me. Why would I pay for your food? If anything, you asked me out, but I'm obviously willing to pay for myself. Excuse me. At this point, she looks angry and tells me she didn't bring any money. Why would you go to a restaurant and not bring any money? Because you're supposed to pay, and I didn't realize you were a jerk. Aw, that's too bad, isn't it? At this point, I couldn't believe how entitled she was, and I knew we weren't compatible. Well, I guess I'm a jerk then. I laid down $40 to cover my bill and tip and walked out of the restaurant to let her figure out how to cover her part. Now, I think it's fairly obvious what's going to happen. Nobody, for the most part, thinks this guy did anything wrong. All the top comments are not the a-hole, not the a-hole, not the a-hole. I'm at the 5th top comment, still not, just pretty much everyone's in agreement like, nah, dude, you didn't do anything wrong. In today's day and age, just split the bill. Basically, every single response is that he didn't do anything wrong. So I think, let me do this. I've been in these situations before, and I want to stress something that I find really, really angering in the story, and it's the part where he says she orders a cocktail, and then she orders a second drink. Oh, I've been there, man. Maybe you guys have been there. I've gone out on dates where they order a bunch of drinks. The bill ends up being over $100, and I'm like, so are you covering your cocktails? Like, dude, I'll be nice, and I'll take the appetizer, like this guy's saying. I can relate to this story, like, to a great degree. I order an appetizer, we share it, but don't worry, I ordered it, I'll pay for it. Like, you didn't ask for it, I'm not going to make you pay, but I'll absolutely share what I have. But you ordered 2 cocktails. What are those, like $7 to $10 a piece? Now the bill's racked up. I've been on dates where the women will just like have like 3 cocktails, and they add like 40 or 50 bucks to the tab, and then I'm like, dude, yeah, I get it, I'll pay, but come on, man, you're chugging, old fashions? Nah, none of that, right? So I'll say this. I am at a point in my life where the culture war and the weird cultural dynamics have just become so strange, and you don't know what's what anymore for the most part. Like what I was mentioning earlier in the study, if a woman just, believes in traditional gender roles, then I can respect that she assumes you'll pay the bill. But if it's like a feminist type, then I wouldn't respect that. But more importantly, I think just all in all, unless you know the person to be, I'll say this. You should absolutely know beforehand what kind of date this is going to be. Is the man going to be the gentleman and pull the chair for the woman and hold the door for her? Or is the guy going to be like, it's on you, man? Because I'll tell you what, if for me, growing up in the city and most of my friends being liberal, I'm not paying for your food. But not only that, I'll put it this way. Respect is earned, not given. I'm not going to pay for your food no matter who you are. If I respect you, if you're my friend, I'll cover the tab, no problem. If we're going on a first date, if we're going out to eat, I'm not doing anything for you, period. And I'll say this too, because I think this discussion often can be roped back to this idea of, you've got a lot of guys, nice guys they call them, who say things like women only like jerks, and it's just not true. Women like guys that are confident and assertive, and there's a difference between someone who's a jerk and someone who's assertive. So you see a lot of stories about nice guys saying basically yelling at and insulting women, talking about how nice they were. Like, no, dude, if you were actually a nice guy, you would be like, hey, I'm into you. And then when she says I'm not, be like, all right, have a nice day. There was a post on Reddit a while ago from a woman who complained about getting girlfriend zoned. And she was saying that guys always complain about getting friend zoned, but she's complaining about getting girlfriend zoned because she's like, every time she meets a guy, they want to go on a date with her, and she says that's not fair because she just wants friends. And I've understood this for a long time. I'm like, yeah, welcome to life. Okay, I meet a girl, I like her. I say, hey, would you be interested in going on a date sometime? She says, I'm not interested in you that way. I say, have a nice day. And I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm not going to be a jerk and just ghost you. But no, consider it done. I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm not going to go to the movies with you. I'm not going to go to eat with you. We're not going to be friends for one simple reason. If I'm interested in something more than friends and you're not, we're at an impasse. There's nothing that can be done here. And if you try to be friends with a guy who wants to date you, that's going to cause problems for both of you. And I think, look, you've got 2 human beings who both want something. If they can't get what they want, then you've got an imbalance in trade. And that doesn't work for me. I know what I want. And if I say, go on a date with a woman, and she's like, I don't see this going any further, I'll shake your hand and be like, it was nice knowing you. Right? Because I'm not going to put you in the girlfriend zone. If you're going to be in the girlfriend zone, I'm going to be in the friend zone. It's not going to work. It's just never going to happen. You know, so then I always see these stories about people making fun of guys because the guys are complaining about getting friend zoned. And I'm like, well, I can certainly sympathize with both the woman who gets girlfriend zoned and both the guy who gets friend zoned. But I think that the cold reality is, don't be friends with someone you want to date if they don't want to date you. And don't be mad if somebody doesn't want to be friends with you because they do want to date you. I don't know. So anyway, I don't even know how I got into that portion of the conversation, but thought it was a funny story, and it's Sunday, so maybe Sunday will bring a little bit more levity, although I'm sure a lot of people are going to see this and then start, hating women or something. But I think the truth is, going back to this story, they talk about the dark triad, right? Psychopathy, Machiavellianism, narcissism. The truth is, people are bad people. Like, bad people are bad people. They exist. There's enough of them. And what we're seeing here, I do not believe is indicative of women. It's indicative of negative personality traits. So I will stress, in our society, an exploit was created. Men of good nature, seeking to take care of women, offered to pay their meals, and women of good nature were honored by the privilege. Today, things have changed. Now people kind of pay their own bills. But you have women who want to exploit that system. They want to exploit that goodwill with a foodie call. Men do similar things. It's just about people who are willing to exploit others for personal gain. Man, I'll tell you what. I went on a date once, like 10 years ago, and thought the chick was pretty cool. I was fairly broke at the time, and we ordered, and I ordered real light. I got like a Caesar salad and a drink, and she went nuts. And then once we were done, she was like, I really appreciate like getting up to leave. And I'm like, what's like, you're going to split the bill? And then she just left. And then me being broke, I was like, oh my God, dude, I can't afford to pay for everything she bought. And that was a total manipulation. These are bad people. But I'm an adult now, right? That was like 12 years ago or something ridiculous. So you live and learn. Today, I'm more of a, I don't want to say a-hole or jerk or anything like that, but more assertive, like, I'll sit down and be like, you're paying for your own food. Like, I appreciate your company. Have a nice day. And I'll get up and I'll say, waiter, she didn't pay for her bill. I'm not paying for it. Sorry. I think one thing that's important, too, is just, I don't really care anymore, When you're a younger dude, you're really, like, I don't want to say desperate, but it matters a lot more for some reason. I guess once you're older and you've just been through all of the muck and the mire, you're just like, you know what, man, I really have no time for this. I've been there, done that, and I just realized there are more important things in life. So you want to play games? I'm not playing games. Anyway, I'm just ranting now. We're going long. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Maybe there will be news today, but this is funny. I mean, this is kind of news. It's interesting. So next video will be at 1 p.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you there.